Hello, my name is Liz Schlemer, and this is a video for IME 315 Financial Decision Making for Engineers at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. This particular video covers the process of buying a house. So when we look at the 5 areas in this class, this particular video falls into the area of personal financial decisions, but we'll also be looking about doing calculations about investing. So we want to buy a house, and there's a lot of things that are unknown about that. I mean, we've never done this before. It's a huge purchase. So this particular video will look at many of the questions associated with this, particularly how much can you pay each month for the house. So you want to understand, well, if you buy a house, what's the commitment going to be? And then how much do I need for a down payment? How much do you need to save before you actually do the house? And then what are the after-tax monthly costs of home ownership? Because it's actually different than renting, and so you need to understand the process of that. And then what are the advantages of home ownership? Do you even want to do this? The next thing is if you decide yes, then you want to know, where am I going to buy the house? How do I find a location? And then lastly, you might want to understand the process of buying a house. So you've made all these calculations and committed to doing it, found a house, and then found an area that you want. So the question is then, how does that happen? So the first thing we're going to look at is, how much can I pay for a house? And this is a little bit of an easy question. It doesn't take too much energy. And the question is, what do you pay for rent now, and what are you comfortable paying? And there's a rule of thumb that says the house should be about 1/3 of your take-home pay. So if you look at how much you get paid every month, the amount you take home, you take 1/3 of it, and it should be about your housing portion. And then rents increase, but mortgages payments do not. So you need to consider that once you buy a home, it will be a fixed amount, where rents would possibly increase. So for me, my current rent is $2,000 a month. I take home about $5,000, so 1/3 of that is about $1,667. But I am thinking that because it's a fixed amount, that over time I'm going to be making more money, so I could go as high as $2,500. So you need to go through this calculation for yourself to figure things out. But I'm going to go with this amount when I look at all the other calculations we're going to do. So we sort of have an answer now to this question of how much can I pay each month. The second thing I'm going to do is actually say, well, what are the after-tax monthly costs of home ownership? So we have an approximate value of $2,500, but there's other expenses that go with owning a home, and there's also some after-tax consequences of that. So when I look at this, I'm going to look at there's various things that I have to pay: the mortgage or the loan. So when I use the word mortgage, I interchange it with the concept of a loan. And then property tax. So when you own a home, you actually have to pay an extra tax that's called property tax. Homeowners insurance, which you don't necessarily have when you rent. You might have renter's insurance, but it's a little bit more expensive to have a homeowner's insurance. But then there's also the tax saving from interest. So the interest you pay on the loan for your mortgage is tax deductible. So that means your taxable income is actually going to be lower, and therefore your taxes are going to be lower. So we want to understand what that is. Now, all of these are a function of the cost of the home, which depends on what you can afford. So it's quite circular. So I'm going to just start with a number, and you can refine this number back and forth to decide what's going to be best for you. And it might be good to do this in an Excel spreadsheet, because then you can fool around with the values. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to back into these numbers, given that I want to have $2,500 a month calculations. So one of the ways you can figure out what the payment on a mortgage is by using the PMT function or the PV function in Excel. So PMT will give you a payment for a particular loan, and PV will give you the present value of the loan, or the amount of the loan for a given payment. So for us, we know the payment we want to make, which is $2,500. So we're going to use the PV function to figure out what loan amount does that equal to. Now, what we'll need to do is figure out these particular parameters in the function, which is the rate, the interest rate per period, the number of periods, and the payment per period. Now, remember, I told you we wanted to pay $2,500 a month, so that we're going to already know that particular value. The thing we don't know is what is the interest rate. Now, what I did did is I just Googled it a couple days ago, and I found that the rates that I had that came up when I Googled it looked like this. So 30-year fix, 30-year for a VA, 20-year fix, 15-year fix. Most people go with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Now there's two items listed there. One is the APR, which stands for annual percentage rate. Now this is a percentage rate that even though you're paying it monthly, it's annualized. And that would be like the equivalent annual rate that you're paying on the interest. But for us, what we're interested in is a monthly rate. So we're going to take this $375 and divide it by 12, because remember we want $2,500 per month. So we want to know the interest rate per month. So in order to get that, we take this number and divide by 12. Now it won't be that much different if you accidentally use the APR and divide it by 12, but you're really supposed to be using this particular interest rate and to divide it by 12. So that's 0.3125% per month. So I have interest now. I have the interest rate in this particular function. So the next thing I want to do is calculate the number of periods. So how many periods? It's a 30-year loan. Remember I said most people do have a 30-year loan, but we're looking at months. So the payments per month. So that's why we take 30 times 12, which would be 360 months. So when I do this calculation using 0.3125%, 360 months, and $2,500, I get a mortgage that's $539,000 to $822. So now that's how much I can afford to borrow from the bank. So we have this answer now to our question about what is the cost of the how much loan can we get. But there's another part of that, because the cost of the house is the mortgage plus the down payment. And we're just going to assume a 10% down payment. Now, that's a pretty high amount. If you think about 10%, it's like more than $50,000. But most banks want you to have a significant amount of money in the bank to put towards the down payment. And we can talk about savings accounts in later videos, but that's what we'll be using here. So 10% down means that we're going to be able to afford a house that's $599,802, so like $600, but I'm going to use the $599,802 value, so around that amount. So now we've decided this. The mortgage amount is $2,500 a month. The property tax is 1% plus area-specific rates. So 1% is the California property tax, and then there's other expenses associated with different municipalities. The average in LA is 1.16%, so I'm going to use this, although that's probably not anybody's amount. And this means that it's 1.16% of the purchase price you have to pay every single year. So we look at the $599,802, we multiply it by 0.0116, and we get $69.58 per year, or approximately $580 a month. So you can see now we have not only $2,500 payment on the mortgage, but we have a $580 property tax. So that adds to the cost. The next thing is looking at homeowners insurance, and if you Google this, it's between $100 and $150 per month for homeowners insurance. And so I'm just going to go with $100. You can adjust that number later, but that's a good round number to use, $100 a month. So now we have $580 additional cost and $100 additional in homeowner insurance. So, but the good thing is that interest is tax deductible, and sometimes property tax is tax deductible, although it's a little bit up in the air right now whether it's tax deductible because of the state of California. So I'm just going to go with the interest portion being tax deductible. So if we say that, and you're just going to have to take my word for this, that 90% of your mortgage payment, at least at the very beginning of the mortgage, is interest. In fact, more like 95%. So if I take the $2,500 mortgage payment and I multiply it by 9.9, that means $2,250 see every single month is a decrease in my taxable income. The tax rate at the marginal level is about 25%. So that means if we take $2,250 times 0.25, we're going to have $562 a month lower tax payments. That's really great news because we've just increased our costs with the property tax and the homeowner's insurance. So we need to, this is good, this will offset that. So when we look at this, then we said our net monthly payment is going to be the mortgage plus the property tax plus the homeowner's insurance minus the tax savings. And so that equates to $2,618. It's a little bit over the $2,500 that we said we could afford. So we might want to go back and adjust the amount of the house, the amount we pay for the house to hit right at $2,500, or we can just go with this and say, yeah, $2,618 is a good amount. So we can pay $2,618 a month for a house that's about $600,000. That's pretty cool. Now we know exactly what the housing price we can afford. So now we're going to look at how much we might need for a down payment. So we know we talked about that we were going to put 10% down for your loan, and so what I assumed here is it's going to be a $600,000 house for 10%. So we need to have that much amount of money up front. There's other fees, what's called closing costs, though, that you need to consider. One of the main ones is what's called points. So points is a percentage of a loan amount, and it's usually 1 to 2%. So in this case, you're going to get a loan from the bank, and they want 1% of that loan up front, 1 or 2%. So the higher the points, the lower the interest rate. So some people prefer to have a higher points, have a higher upfront cost to have lower monthly payments. But I'm going to assume a 1%, 1 point on the loan. So that, remember, we have a $600,000 house and we're putting $60,000 down. So the loan is going to be $540,000. I take 1% of that, and that's $5,400. So when we look at all the other expenses, there's a bunch of other stuff that need to be included. Origination fees, appraisal fees, home inspection, escrow, prepaid property tax. There's a bunch of stuff, and you can look these up to see what they are, but there are several things you need to pay up front also beyond just purchasing the house. So if we look at the total amount that you'll need to come up with at the beginning of the when you buy the house, it's going to be $74,000. That's a lot of money. So the down payment plus all this closing costs. But it's good to know ahead of time. Sometimes you can get down payments as little as 5%, and you need to consider that as a possibility, but mostly 10% is a good amount. It used to be 20%, but now most people go with about 10%, especially in California. So now we know how much we can pay for each month, how much our down payment needs to be, and what are after-tax costs. So now I'm just going to look just quickly at what are the advantages and the disadvantages of owning a home. So there is this concept of an American dream is owning a home, and people just think it's what you need to do in life. That's not really true. There's some places in California or in the United States where this is not true, and all over Europe. Many people do not own homes. They mostly rent. In New York, most people rent. San Francisco, most people rent. So there's a lot, it's changing a little bit over time that you don't necessarily have to have this American dream. But you will have, if you have a fixed rate mortgage, then your mortgage costs don't ever change. So rents increase, mortgages don't. It could be a good investment because we know that real estate prices seem to always be increasing. So it would be good to have that as an investment. It changes over time. And some people think I'm going to buy a house. When I retire, I'll sell it and I'll have a big chunk of money. Well, you have to live somewhere for sure, but that might be something somebody does. The disadvantages is you actually have to take care of the upkeep. So if you're a renter, you know when your drain clogs, you can just call somebody and they can fix it. When you own a home, you have to take care of that. It can be more expensive. Rents, mortgages are expensive. Taking care of a home is expensive. You have to pay for a lot of things, a lot of upgrades. It can be more expensive. And you're committed to a place, so it's harder to move around. You'll be kind of stuck in this place. But of course, you can sell the house. But you might actually want to be a little bit more free about where you live. Also, it's very easy to overextend yourself when you purchase a house, to say, oh, I can afford more than I can, and then you're in trouble. So the next question is, where might I live? Where the house might be? Well, good news is that you know how much you can spend on the house. So we decided that $600,000 would be amount. So I just go on Zillow and look at neighborhoods, maybe neighborhoods near my work, and see if there's homes that cost about the amount that I can. That I might be able to afford, and looking at that house. Now, it depends on various markets. Sometimes the price of the house is not actually the price that that you will end up paying for it. If it's what's called a seller's market, that means you might actually pay more than that. If it's a buyer's market, you might pay less than that. So you need to sort of use this as a guide and then talk to a realtor about how you would be doing that. So you look at different various neighborhoods, look at the things that are for sale. Zillow is a good place to look. And then now you say, well, okay, I know where I want to buy. I know how much I can afford. So now what do I do? So, and you have the down payment. So save for the down payment would be important. Clean up your credit. So if making sure that you look at your credit report and make sure you have good credit ratings so that you can get good interest payments on your loans. Determine the price of the house you can afford. So we did that already, that $600,000 amount. Find a neighborhood that you want to live in, and then look for a realtor in that neighborhood, somebody who knows the neighborhood and can help you maneuver the system. Then look for a particular house, and you might have to go look at a bunch of different houses until you find one. It sometimes takes months to find a particular house that you like, that you can afford. And then you make an offer. And in this process, it's actually a negotiation back and forth between the buyer and the seller. And this is where you really need a realtor, because they need to help you maneuver this process and sort of be a third party in the negotiations. And then once you've decided on an offer, then you enter escrow. And all of those fees that we talked about, they cover the escrow cost, and it's 30 or 90 days. And then at the end of that time period, you pay that $74,100 that you now owe to have the house, and you get your mortgage payment, and you start paying it every month, and then you move in. And that's the process of buying a house. And I hope that this has helped you to really understand what the process is of home ownership and how to go about it for your own personal life. So again, this video was about for IME 315, and it was about buying a home, and it's in the area of personal financial decisions.